Time travel can be great, sure, if your future is bright. I just wanted to know if I'd gotten into my dream college. That's it, pressing the blade of the knife to my wrist. It seemed logical in my head, even if the thought of committing to the idea turned my gut. It would have to be a deep enough cut to hurt, but not kill me. That's what I kept thinking. But all I could really think about was the teeth of the blade grazing my flesh as I once again couldn't bring myself to do it. It wasn't new to me. I'd been hurting myself for most of my teenage life. In an attempt to jump further than my current durability, I slammed my head into the wall, punched myself in the face, and got others to punch me in the face. I even slammed a door on my foot when I became convinced I could get winning lottery numbers. Let me preface this by telling you outright, I am not a masochist. Please get that out of your head, just like the title said. I can only jump if I'm in pain, and like every other time throughout my life, I was desperate to jump one more time. I couldn't wait any longer. I'd waited 5 painstaking months, and the letter which would change my life still hadn't come through. So, I figured I'd cheat a little. Cheating is fine, right? As long as nobody gets hurt. You've probably clicked on this from the title. So here's my explanation. I've been able to jump forwards in time since I was a little kid. The first time it happened I was maybe 5 years old. I was playing outside, barefoot in the grass, and stamped on a wasp. I didn't know it was a wasp at the time. All I knew was pain I had never felt, sizzling through me. I remember screaming, and my mom's yelling. I remember the blue sky suddenly getting further and further away, and the sensation of my knees hitting the grass, but I didn't hit the ground. Instead, I found myself sitting in front of the TV in our living room. Outside, the sky was dark, and Mom was making dinner in the kitchen. I knew that because I could smell my favorite, the thick aroma of macaroni and cheese filling my nose and the back of my throat. I jumped up, unsteady on my feet when the world swam around me. I called for my mom, and she answered. I could hear her. I could feel my bare feet sinking into the carpet and hear my dad typing on his laptop. As I got closer to the kitchen, however, my senses started to dampen. The smell of food faded, and then so did Dad's typing. Mom became a shadow in front of me, her eyes far too bright as she reached out to hug me. Clara, her voice was so clear in my ears. And then it was gone, morphing into my present mother's cry. Clara, when I opened my eyes, I was staring up at the blazing sun and the blue sky, and the birds, and everything was back to normal. I was lying on my back, my foot still stinging, while my mom was trying to elevate my trembling foot on her leg. Hey, it's okay, she cooed when I started to cry. It's okay, it was just a wasp, honey. But I wasn't crying because of the wasp sting. I was crying because the sky had changed color. The whole world had danced around me, and I was craving the arms of my other mother who was 2 days in the future, waiting for me. Of course, I didn't know any of that when I was so young. I thought I was dreaming. Mom did take me to see a psychiatrist when I was a little older, because, being a kid, I hurt myself a lot, which led to me regularly jumping forwards in time for maybe a few minutes. When I fell off my bike at 10 years old, riding up and down the street with my friends, I leapt 2 days ahead. Suddenly at school, as I got older, I became more aware of it and used it to my advantage, or I tried to. I couldn't really call it a superpower if it was only triggered by pain, and only allowed me a glimpse into the near future. However, I did what I could. In my freshman year, I impaled my finger with a chopstick in the cafeteria so I could glimpse test answers, but because I didn't really think it through, and I had no idea where I'd jump to, that mission had been a fail. It didn't always work in my favor, because I couldn't control it. It's not like I could close my eyes and imagine a specific time or date. I just got flung forwards. With no destination, I experimented with it over the years, trying to find my limits depending on how much pain I was in. Now, I know it sounds bad, but the amount of pain I was in was a factor in how long I could stay in the future, as well as my present self's state. According to my friends, teacher, and mother, I enter a trance-like state when I jump forward, but I can be pulled out of it. As for pain, the chopsticks gave me maybe 3 minutes. So, in my head, presently, if I was going to jump and have a good amount of time to figure out if I'd gotten into my dream college, then I had to be in agony, worse than the wasp sting, the chopsticks slamming my head into the door, all of it. And was I really willing to put myself through that? Yes, I was delirious from no sleep. I hadn't eaten in days, and the only thing which could save me was my stupid fucking superpower, which isn't even a superpower when I'm not in control. That's how I found myself sitting on my bed with my mother's prized carving knife, stroking the cutting teeth against my arm. I've never been great with blood, And the idea of dealing with a gory, crimson mess when I'd come back wasn't appealing. But I would know. That's what I kept thinking. I would know my fate if I was destined for my dream college, or to be stuck in the town I was ready to get away from. That was my motivation as I bit into my jacket sleeve and pressed pressure on the blade. Not enough to cut, but definitely to hurt. Not enough. I thought dizzily, my thoughts drowned by the idea of rejection letters printed in red. I pushed harder. And when it was enough to set something off inside me, a screech ripping from my throat and muffling into the material of my sleeve, I knew I had to go further. Fuck. I squeezed my eyes shut and lifted the knife. This time nowhere near my arm. This time I plunged it into my leg, and then again. And again. My screams were barely audible. I could feel something damp, something wet and warm dripping down my leg. And then my arm. My head was spinning. And I was screaming, sobbing, the knife slipping from my grasp. Pain exploded like I knew it would. Like I'd anticipated, though I wasn't expecting it to be so cruel. So cutting, tearing the breath from my lungs. The shock pain was always the best way to jump, when my body wasn't expecting it, and flung me in its panic. I wasn't jumping though. I was still in the present, choking on my own strangled breaths. I knew I'd gone too far when there was far too much red, pooling, splashing, staining my flesh and clothes. I jumped up to get help, but I was already flying. Falling, my physical body slammed into my bed. But I kept falling, plunging into the dark. I'm so used to opening my eyes to sunlight, or a twilight sky, city lights, or my own bedroom. Instead, though, I was greeted to darkness. It wasn't the dark I knew. I'd known it since I was a little girl, scared of the bogeyman in my closet. But this was a different type of darkness. It was the unknown. A deep, never-ending stretch of nothing with no light, no sound, no anything. I was there. I existed in that space, but I couldn't move or speak or cry. And when I gathered myself, I found pieces of me missing, like something had been torn away. Something important, but that something was lost to me. It felt like part of me had been cut away, while the rest of me hung in endless oblivion which never stopped, never faltered. How could a place like that exist? I couldn't feel my eyes to close them, or my mouth to scream, and all I could think, right then, was this it? Was this what it was like to die? I didn't feel dead. I was alive. I was thinking. I had self-aware thoughts. So why couldn't I move? Why couldn't I cry out? Miss Mira, that was my name. I thought, Clara Mira. Somehow, though, that was fading. I don't know how. I think back and I try and replicate this feeling into words, into a way of telling you, but I don't know. It almost felt like my name wasn't mine anymore. I didn't have an identity. The voice was somehow comforting. A gentle murmur which almost felt like a blanket being thrown over me. I felt myself immediately attach myself to her. When I opened my mouth to reply, I realized I didn't have one. I didn't have lips or a throat. Everything that was me was no longer physical. The physical me no longer existed. Maybe I was in a coma. I thought, that made sense. What if I'd gone overboard with causing myself pain in the future, and landed myself in hospital? Yes, that made sense. Why I couldn't move my body. Why I couldn't speak or cry out. I was in the hospital. Miss Mira, are you there? The woman spoke, and her voice was like nothing I'd heard before. She didn't sound like a nurse. It's okay. You can speak to us while we're making last-minute preparations. Don't be afraid. Afraid? Why would I be afraid? And what did she mean? What last-minute preparations? The woman cleared her throat, and I heard a door opening, light footsteps following. Dr. Eris. It was a man this time. Please refrain from talking to them. He sighed. It only makes the process harder. I sensed movement, and he was coming towards me. I didn't know where I was, who I was, but I knew he was in front of me. I imagined him bending down, coming to face me. He felt clinical, everything about him, despite having no senses. My phantom nose smelled antiseptic and something strong and lemony. The man himself smelled of shoe polish and hair gel, gathering an overpowering scent. I'm sorry, he said. Really, I am. I've said this to hundreds if not thousands of you, and it doesn't lessen the guilt. Michael, the woman said in a hissed whisper. Remember what was said. We leave our emotions at the door. The man sighed. Delilah. The moment they greenlit this project, every single person involved kissed their humanity goodbye. Her voice was soft. I know, which includes you and me. She sighed. Do you have children, Michael? Of course not. He scoffed. Who would want to bring children into this world? A world where we do this, where we go to great lengths to make our mark on the planet and lose everything that makes us human in the process. It's a fact, Michael. The woman said, "The human brain is far more powerful than that of a computer." Indeed, it is. And we should be using that information on far more important things than this. The woman laughed lightly. "Are you saying we have made a mistake? I don't think you need to ask me that question." I see. Her heels went click-clack on marble. "Let's leave our emotions and humanity outside, shall we? Of course, we're professionals. We'll continue in the morning when she's fully severed." The man's footsteps faded, and I was left with the woman. I could hear her quick breaths. She sounded like she was crying. "You're going to be brave for me, Miss Mira," she choked out. "Do you understand me?" Brave? My own voice startled me into awareness. It came like a wave of icy water, slamming into me. It was soft, a low hum which didn't feel like it was coming from my throat. Not my throat. It wasn't attached to me, bouncing between four walls I couldn't see. Her words sent my thoughts into a frenzy. What did that mean? Footsteps, the door closing behind them. I had to get home, whatever this future was. I didn't want it, but no matter what I did, I couldn't jump back. Fear filled me, but without a body to feel, it was no. I didn't feel a twist in my gut or an ache in my chest. I've often prayed to stop feeling something, to stop feeling pain when I hurt myself, to leap forwards. I've wanted to rip out my own heart when I developed a crush, or one of my dad's letters arrived in the mailbox. Emotions are weak. They weaken us. That's what I have always thought. And yet right there in the dark, with questions haunting the back of my mind, all I wanted to do was feel. I wanted to feel despair and anger, and joy and pain and hopelessness, pleasure. I wanted to feel sick to my stomach and panicky. And I wanted butterflies, like in middle school when I discovered that my classmates weren't so icky after all. I wanted all of it, because being stuck inside a seemingly endless darkness which only stretched further the more you looked was worse than death. Being self-aware and yet with no self was a living fucking nightmare. I had to get out. I had to get home. How much time had passed? Why wasn't I jumping back? "Hello," I spoke for the second time, my voice a sharp hiss. "Where am I?" "You tell me." I'm not sure what relief would have felt like when I didn't have a body, but at that moment it was like the tiniest splinter of light was slicing through. The voice was male, a guy my age. I didn't know what to say at first. I wanted to laugh, cry, scream at him. I wanted to ask him his name, his age, where he went to school. I wanted to ask him more than I ever could. Instead, though, all that would slip from my phantom mouth was, "You're here too." He sighed, and his sigh rattled, echoing off the walls. "Yeah, though I don't exactly know where here is. Those guys aren't talkers." "The hospital," I whispered. We're at the hospital." That's what I wanted to believe. We were at the hospital, right? Whoever those people were, they were fixing us. The boy, however, wasn't as optimistic. "Really?" he hummed. "It doesn't feel like a hospital though, right? Where are the beeping monitors? What is this? Some kind of coma? And if so, how can we talk to each other?" "We're hurt," I said. "That's why we can't feel anything." "Yeah, you still haven't answered my question. If we're in a coma, how are we conscious? Think about it. We both wake up not being able to feel. And these two random people tell us in vague cryptic speech not to freak out." He let out a laugh. "Come on, this isn't the hospital. It's just," he trailed off with a sigh, "it's just dark. That's all there is. I've tried to figure out a way to open my eyes, to move my body, but there's nothing. We're fucking stuck." His tone had grown sour, and I wondered how long he'd been there for. "What's your name?" I asked, after a long pause. "Kenji," he said through breath. "I think. You think?" "Yeah," he said. "It's weird. I keep zoning in and out of consciousness. It's like sleeping. But every time I feel like I'm not going to come back." Kenji hissed out a shaky breath. "When I do manage to zone out, it's like I come back with more pieces of me missing. I remember when I first woke up in this place and I knew exactly who I was and where I came from. The only thing which was foggy was my memory. But now it's like I'm slowly starting to forget things, like important things. You know," his voice broke, "like, I know big things like my name, my age, who my parents are and where I went to school. But it's the little things. I can't remember my 12th birthday party, and I should be able to, because it was the day my dad left. That's the only detail I held on to though. My dad leaving me and mom. I don't know what my birthday cake looked like, or the friends I invited. There's just this hole in my head, and it's getting bigger." I thought he was going to trail off, but he continued. "My summer before college, I promised myself I was going to tell the person I was crushing on. And I remember that we drove to Eden Lake and ate burgers and lay on the back of my beaten-up Hummer." But Kenji sounded like he was struggling, but with no mouth. There was only silence. "Like I said, it's little things being torn away. I know that I treasured that day. So why is a big chunk of it missing? Why? Why can't I remember their name? No matter what I do, I can't remember their name or what they looked like. They're just a fucking shadow. A shadow in the back of my head, and I don't know why. Why am I bleeding? His voice grew hysterical. Why am I bleeding my own fucking memories? What's going to happen when this thing stops? Am I just going to be nothing? What even counts as nothing? And where the fuck are my parents? He was crying now, or at least, his voice was. You keep saying we're in a hospital. So, where is everybody? Where's my mom? I know I have one. I have a dad and a little sister, but like everything else, their names are gone. I can't think straight. When I do, whatever this is inside my head, it gets stronger. It takes more. What do you remember? I whispered. Before all of this, I dunno. It's hard to see a clear picture. I started college a few months ago, so I was going to parties and socializing. I think I fell in a trash can at one point and barfed Taco Bell all over this girl, but that's about all I can see. I don't know how I got here. When I try and rake my brain, I just get confusing flashes. Yeah, shit's annoying. Why am I reminded of the most embarrassing moments of my first week at college? And yet I can't even remember my little sister's name. I wasn't sure how to answer that. How long have you been here? He scoffed. No idea. I just woke up here. I asked people what's going on, and I'm ignored. Kenji paused. What was your name again? Clara. Nice to meet you. Clara. Sorry for the existential rant. That left us in a comfortable silence. But I missed his voice even seconds after he'd stopped talking. I couldn't stand to be alone. I needed someone there. So I didn't drive myself fucking crazy. I think I was that person to him too. I shouldn't be here, I said before I could bite back my words. Oh, Kenji chuckled. What makes you special? Instead of answering him, I thought back to a question which had been bugging me. Had I put myself in enough pain to leap through years? What year is it? You're kidding, right? No, I'm serious. What's the year? You're really clinging onto this coma theory for dear life, aren't you? Kenji, please. Sure. I'll play whatever game you're playing. Elden Ring came out. Crap. I can't think of world events now. You're putting me on the spot. I don't know. Just tell me the year. It's 2022. Obviously, 2022. And if this was 2022, how far forward was this in my future? What about the month? Seriously. Clara, what's going on? Before I could speak, the door opened. Footsteps, followed by a tinny ringing noise, and feedback from something I couldn't see. It hit me, and I resisted against a cry. Fuck, Kenji yelled. What was that? His voice was fading. And so was I, without a body. I was weightless, as my brain bled into oblivion. But it wasn't just my thoughts. I saw flickers of my life flash in front of my eyes, only to be drowned, eaten up, by the rapidly growing tumor inside my head. I was falling, and everything I was splintering. Just like Kenji said, the name of my mother was suddenly lost. Every instance before I was 18 years old, every birthday and Christmas, every I love you, I hate you, I don't want to lose you, all of it, in my panic. As I struggled to pull away from the black hole which was growing inside my mind, I thought I was jumping back, but instead, I was jumping forward. From what pain? I didn't have a body. How could I feel pain? Silence. And I realized I couldn't feel anything anymore. It was so dark. I couldn't feel fear or pain or anger. I was nothing. I was nothing existing in nothing. Until voices, laughing, I could hear them. People, they swam in and out of my mind's focus. I was suddenly aware of how cold I was. So fucking cold. I remember feeling cold and hollow, wrong, like I'd been thrust below icy depths without an anchor. The voices came closer. And this time I didn't have my own inside voice. My thoughts weren't mine. They were a mess of tangled words that didn't make sense. There were so many voices in my head. Different languages and numbers all coming together to create a singularity which existed inside me, shoving me back into my head. Hey, can I play a song? A girl yelled. Yeah, sure. Alexa, she trilled. Then, light. It was faded, but I could see it. A circular blue light, which was far too close. The words were coming out of my mouth before I could stop it. It was my voice, purged of emotion. I couldn't speak over it. The toneless drawl coming out instead. No, I said, while the mechanical screech in my head continued, drowning me out. No, I could feel myself growing more hysterical. The force inside my head lighting up, pushing me back. What would you like me to play? I didn't hear the name of the song she requested, but did hear the melody. A pop song. It started up, and the girl squealed. Yes, I heard this on a TikTok. No, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe that the hospital I had been taken to wasn't a hospital. that I hadn't been scooped out of my body. Like I didn't matter and put to better use. I didn't have a mouth to scream with, or a body to feel panic, but I did. I felt it deep, deep inside of me, pushing me further and further over the edge. I was screaming into my own head, and I didn't stop until I felt it. Pain, real, genuine pain rattling my body. Oh God, my body. It was like coming up for air. When I opened my eyes, I was still screaming, curled up in my mother's lap. My arm was still bleeding, and my mom was sobbing, struggling to wrap a bandage around it, but I could still feel how cold I'd been. The empty hole in my head getting deeper and deeper, ignoring Mom and getting to unsteady feet. I found my laptop. I could still hear the melody of the song the girl had asked me to play. Clara, Mom was in my face, but I couldn't explain it to her. Clara, you're scaring me. Her words were white noise. I could still hear Kenji sobbing, trying to remember who he was. He was in that future with me, and he had no idea. All I could think about was that song. I was humming it, then singing, sobbing, screaming into my keyboard. But there was nothing. That song doesn't exist yet, and when it does, that is my future. Cold, trapped, my mind taken over by a force I couldn't understand. An electrical leech inside my skull, with no fucking body, no mouth to cry out with. I would rather die. Part of me wants to jump forward again. Maybe I can find out how this happens to me. But at the same time, what if I get stuck again? What if I can't get back?